Our MC took 20 minutes. I was requested to say as much as I could when I came out last Saturday, so I prepared nearly 2 hours. But I will try and keep it down as brief as I can. So if the gong goes, I might breach the umpire's rules. Notes, I've written them out, and I've got my daughter-in-law who's written through a computer and printed them out for me, because at my age sometimes my mind goes into space and I have to bring it back to earth by looking at the notes, and I'll probably confuse you and myself. But I'm very grateful for the honour you have given me, because of my seniority, to come and unveil this honour roll. Well, I'm not a humorist like our previous speaker, and I'm going to rely purely on the early history of Wunkar. It might sound a bit dry, but I think some of you will be interested to hear it. I do consider myself to be well qualified to do this. I was born in Loxton in 1913. I then spent the next 32 years of my life on Hope Farm, which is situated just across the fence from this present site of the Wunkar football ground, now owned by Sir Hansen. I was associated with all those early pioneers who made Wunkar great. I owe them many thanks, for it was through their efforts that I was able to enjoy this great game of Aussie rules football. First and foremost, I want to thank my Lord and Creator for blessing me with a strong and healthy body. The next to come to mind is Mr. Bill Durbridge, who was my school teacher at Merlin. He would on many occasions pick 2 football teams from the 40-odd pupils, and then in the lunch hour act as a coach and umpire. Needless to say, my lunch bag was never opened on these occasions, as football was more important than eating. I still recall Mr. Durbridge, who was a boarder in my parents' home, taking me in a buggy and a pair to Loxton on a Saturday morning to do his shopping, and then in the afternoon to a football match at Pyre, in which he played. It was Pater versus Pyre on the grounds at Pyre, now known as the Pony Club ground. This was in 1924 with Mr. Jim Butterfield. To me, he stood head and shoulders above them all. To me, he was the uncrowned king of Wunkar. Mr. Butterfield's vision and enthusiasm was contagious. He was a powerful, motivating force when it came to organising sport, social and any other event. The time and talents would be too time-consuming, and I certainly wouldn't give him time tonight. But I cannot fail to mention those very important people, those faithful womenfolk of Wunkar, whose long labours of love put the icing on the cake. The holidays of 1925, when Mr. Jim Butterfield was responsible for calling the community together for a football scratch match on an improvised oval in a paddock on the property of the late Angle Fetzi. This property is now owned by the Gibbs family. The ultimate aim was to form a football club. As mentioned before, I was 12 years of age at the time, and I relished playing in this match. I was rewarded by being given the right to vote at the meeting held after the match. Mr. Butterfield was spokesperson. He was duly elected chairman, a position he held till he left the district in the late 1930s. This meeting resolved to form a football club and call it Wunkar. The colours were red and white, as you will see. In the election that followed, Mr. Aaron Golke was made captain, Mr. Ed Graspy vice captain, and Mr. Ted Schultz secretary. 2 additional members whose names I can't recall were elected to make up the management committee. Now this is where I come into conflict with somebody, because Mr. Bob Hilt was elected patron. Whether you call him patron, president or not, I don't know, but Mr. Jim Butterfield was the president, and Mr. Hilt, to my recollection, was the patron for the fairest and best player. I became a recipient of this in the year 1936. Mr. Harry Stanley was appointed goal umpire. Mr. Harry Hofficker was made timekeeper. At the original meeting, it was resolved to send an application to the Murray Valley Football Association for membership. This application was accepted and Wunkar entered into competition in this association in 1926. It consisted of Caliph, Galga, McGee, Bakunda, Mantung and Wunkar. Looking at this same area today, you may well wonder how it was possible for all these small railway towns to field a football team. To explain this, I will have to, for a brief time, digress from football to politics. It's 1 to 2,000 acres. A sturdy generation of stout-hearted settlers cleared this land, set up homes and reared families. They battled hard, defying hardship and droughts. They enjoyed a freedom that we as a nation today have lost. But there was one thing they found impossible to do. That was, in the Depression, produce their farm produce at below cost of production and survive. Those with insufficient fat were forced to walk off their land, even after many years of hard toil. A study group was formed and held in our Wunkar Tin Hall that brought concerned people together from far and wide to try and find out why there was this paradox of poverty amidst plenty. A movement was started that changed the course of history. I would love to tell you all about it, but now back to football. When the Wombi and Canny railway line was opened on the 4th of September 1925, 2 railway repair gangs were stationed in barracks, one at Murla and one at Caliph. Also the Rotary line had 2 repair gangs. They consisted of 4 men to a gang. Most of them were excellent footballers. Also at this point in time a school was opened in Wunkar and Rapilka. These, with Murla and new residents, supplied Wunkar with some excellent footballers. In 1926, the Wunkar area was still a government reserve of 1,100 acres of scrub, with a government dam called Walker's Dam. This dam often had up to 8 feet of water, and this became a venue for some of the footballers to have a swim after a match. The only building on this reserve was of galvanised iron, constructed and owned by Mr. Martin Schutz. It acted as a home, general store and post office. Later, when the town was surveyed, the survey line put the main street through the middle of this building. The logical place for an oval for the first year to save travelling for the competitive was on the farm of Mr. Dick Beard. This farm was being share farmed by Mr. Frank Clayson. This property is now owned by Steve Golding. The oval was marked out close to the Swan Reach Road. The home of Mr. and Mrs. Frank Clayson, just over the hill from the oval, was used by the players after a match to change, wash and have tea. Facilities existed on the oval in the paddock, such as a scoreboard, etc. It was an oval in a bare paddock marked by a plough furrow. The timekeeper improvised by using a cowbell. As funds for equipment were very meagre. When I hear a slow, monotonous clapping, I know that you're getting bored. On one of these occasions, when the play was fast and furious in front of the opposing team's goal square, time lapsed. However, the tongue in the bell had fallen out, so the players and the umpire were not aware that the game had finished. Timekeepers were yelling at the umpire, time, time, time. But the very noisy, excited local barrackers, the umpire failed to hear or discern the problem. It was only until somebody ran onto the ground to inform the umpire that play was stopped. In the meantime, a goal had been kicked. The argument that followed, should or should not the umpire allow the goal to be scored, nearly caused a riot. This goal was allowed and Wunkar lost the match. This prompted Mr. Bob Hilton to donate a brand new bell. In 1927, Len Batten was our new captain and players were recruited from far and wide. Bill Nairn, a farmer from Rapilka, a stout supporter and player, would motor to Rook on a Saturday morning for his mail and provisions. He would pick up any likely player that could be persuaded to come and play. Some names that come to mind are Swansbury, Gogol, Homsch and Shrubsole. Hans used to ride his horse from Cobdogler to meet up with Bill Mann at Rook. At 15 years of age, he could not get a game with the Cobdogler team, but a keen and talented player proved very useful for Wunkar. Then there was the Beer Boys who came by Salty from Payback. Cecil Goldie from Mantung came by from Mantung, winner of the Mile Medal in 1926, joined up with Wunkar in 1927. He became a stalwart for Wunkar for many years. In 28, he became captain and led Wunkar to several premierships until leaving the district. I believe, if my memory serves me right, Rex Heinrich would have been the vice-captain during this period, motoring from his farm at Park Central in a Model T Ford to team up with the rest of the players. In 1928, after the town of Wunkar had been surveyed, the oval that is now in use was grubbed and levelled. 2 galvanised iron rooms were erected as dressing rooms, one being for the visitors. They both had the super luxury of a cold shower. Several iron sheets as bachelors were erected in the rear for toilets. Then later a galvanised iron building with board floors to act as a hall for social functions was erected. The rear had a lean-to to act as a kitchen. It had dirt floors. 2 coppers were placed outside for hot water. All these buildings were built using voluntary labour. Dust storms in the drought years were a common occurrence. The dust would so darken the sky and blot out the sun that lamps would have to be lit in the homes to see. One of these hurricane-like storms was raging on a Saturday when Wunkar and Mukunda were scheduled to play the semi-final. Because of the inclement weather and the flu epidemic, only a few Wunkar players turned up. But the Mukunda team and players turned up in full force. This prompted Davy Butterfield to jump in his car and muster up as many players as possible. At the end of the day, the 2 teams had scored a point each, the oval to the other. The match was finally abandoned.
Sit it down, please.
In 1930, Wunkar went through the series undefeated, also going premiers in 1931. During the Depression years, Captain Clary Reeves and Chairman Davy Butterfield went to Port Adelaide and recruited unemployed footballers to work on the farm and to cut wood for the Adelaide market. Some were good footballers, some not so good. One of these players, Steve Donahue, was a better comedian than a player, who would, with a few words and some body language, have all the players in laughter. For remuneration, Clary Reeves, for whom he worked, planted a crop of wheat. Steve had great expectations of getting a bumper crop and pots of money. On Saturdays, players would ask Steve, how is the crop? Steve would hang his head because the drought had set in and hopes were fading. Later in the year, when asked, how's the crop? Steve would lament his lot, for the rabbits were getting at it. Then at the end of the year, when asked, how's the crop, Steve? Steve related, the final blow. During a storm, a tree had fell on it, and it was a write-off. Experienced an excellent North Adelaide player. On one occasion, in a match in the Tappan Oval, George received a free kick at the centre bounce, from where he promptly put a screw punt to the centre post and scored a major. I believe somebody's telling me today that he had the state record for a long punt kick. I don't doubt that for a moment. This next segment is for men only. So women that are present will have to put their fingers over their ears. The male body has a very vulnerable spot, usually well protected when batting at a cricket match, but not so in football. A kick in this area can be very devastating. On one occasion when we were playing the Loxton Olympic team, the opposing ruckman, desperate to stop George, went in at the front and kicked the wrong ball, leaving George on the ground moaning and groaning in agony. I can always remember fellow players coming to me and advising me that they were out to get you today. They say everything is fair and love and war, yet I found the football ground a great place to make friends. Thank you, ladies, for listening. Goldsmith was, during that year, heading to break all records as a goal scorer. So some players only had eyes for Robbie, leaving other forward players in the cold. This caused a rift that took all the diplomatic skill of Jim Butterfield to heal. It proved Wunkar's undoing, losing the only two crucial matters at the end of the year, and he was proud to go Premier. But Wunkar made up for it in the years to follow. In 1940, the war years saw Wunkar with 20 registered players, but often failing to muster 18 players. This was very frustrating to me as captain, yet we succeeded to go on and advance to the final match. Having a bare 18 players for that day, we looked set to win, building up a handy lead until Jeff Best at centre received a broken jaw. Then Sid Best, winner of the fairest and best medal for the year, was playing at centre half back and received 2 broken fingers. The task became too great for 16 players and we lost. On the cricket field we often see a streaker, but seldom on the football field. I remember on one occasion when playing on the aerodrome paddock in Loxton, which was being substituted while the main oval was under repair. This aerodrome paddock was located from the railway line along the Tackman Road to where the present government buildings are. In this match I became frustrated, having to continue to kick the ball from my position at centre half back without any score taking place. Under an impulse, I took off rugby fashion to try and make a score. I reached the goal mouth and scored a goal, but lost my pants on the way from a stout tackle. I dashed behind the cars until Ross Hall arrived with another pair of pants. The midweek training session was held with a very good attendance. This day somebody went to Mr. Butterfield's car, picked up the bottle of imbrication, and the trainees went to work. It was not till the next day when Mrs. Butterfield was looking for a separate oil that it was discovered that it had been used as imbrication. Wunkar won the finals that year, so separate oil was recommended after that. I captained several social matches against maintaining Rook and Luxton. I migrated to Pipe in 1945, so I will leave some more informed person to give the history of the post-war period. I then bowed out of football finding old age, the pressure of work and raising a family incompatible with football. Given time, more stories could be told. If ever a comprehensive account of the history of the Wunkar football club is contemplated to be written, I would be happy to help. There are many on the honour roll that are listed that were players in the Wunkar team. I would like to conclude by paying tribute to Ira Jury, who was lost over the North Sea on a bombing mission to Germany. Jeff Best, who fell defending his country at Morotai, and Tom Butterfield, who came to grief in a boat fighter over New Guinea. The good book tells us, here we do not have a continuing city, but we are looking for the city that is to come. Most of those early members have already entered that city, but I would be very interested to meet up and hear from those that are still with us from those early days. When I read the football results in the paper and see what is happening today, I feel sure that the spirit of Wunkar will never die. And now a little bit of encouragement. You're not beaten when you lose, but you're beaten when you quit. So I say to you, Wunkar, never give up till a dead horse kicks you.
It's a pleasant duty of
that I have this honour, and I'd like to wish the Wunkar Football Club every success in the future.
the next